It's the Blue and Gold post-game show here as we come to you from Truist Stadium on the campus of North Carolina A&T, the greatest homecoming on earth. And it wasn't a greatest homecoming at all for the Aggies, falling to Hampton 59-17. It's the A&T team that got out to the 14-0 lead and then watched Hampton proceed to score 31 unanswered points before getting a field goal. And then, of course, Hampton able to pile on another 28 points to get to 59. And this is a tough loss. Of course, you can type your comments in the chat. And, it's really a tough loss for words, because not only was it a winnable game, you're coming off a bye, you're coming off a game 2 weeks ago where you played pretty well on the road against Richmond, which was the third of 3 straight games on the road, by the way. So there was all kinds of optimism for the first, 4 minutes of this ball game. And just like that, it dissipated, and you come up on the other side with a 42-point loss.
Yeah, it's as I said before, the question is, where do you go from here? I mean, of course you can't give up. You got to keep pounding, as they say. But it just makes it from a mental and emotional standpoint. It just makes it really, really hard. And so that's a challenge that they are going to have to face, because we got some tough games coming up. We got to play. Who's the Villanova, which is really good, and William and Mary. My goodness. So we really have some tough games coming up. So it's just, I guess, back to the drawing board and see what you got and see what you can do.
And Billy, we didn't think that, win or lose, we thought really A&T could win this football game, but we certainly didn't think that Hampton was 59-17 better than A&T.
No, we didn't. And looking at some of the scores in which Hampton had played, I think last week or the last time they played, they scored 40-some points and lost. But anyway, they were capable.
Yeah, 44. Yep.
Yeah, they were capable of putting up big scores. But I just thought that today we just had that absolute way of winning this ball game. It was a winnable game on paper. But I've always said games are not won on paper. But this game was just kind of demoralizing. We got outscored down 28-3 in the second half. And
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But guys, I really felt the same optimism. But one of the big concerns I had, Billy and Donal, coming into this game was our inability to run the football. And it really manifested itself again today because of the fact that we can't run the football. It makes us a one-dimensional team, and not criticizing Fomby, but Fomby is not a guy that can extend the play. I mean, he's a pocket passer. And it just, when you have this situation where you can't run the football, when you don't have what we might call a big-time playmaker at quarterback in today's game that can turn bad plays into good plays, it really makes it very, very challenging. And so we saw an example of that today. But it's got to be demoralizing, because I too, guys, thought we had a very good opportunity to win today's game. I did not see this coming, but here we are. We are where we are. So go from there.
Yeah. Steve, go ahead.
And coaches, upcoming coaches have looked at this film, and they're ready to sit there. They understand right now that A&T is having a difficult time running the football. So I'm sure that Campbell will get a piece of this film, and they will look at that and look at the stats from today's game and put their game plan on definitely stopping the run. And that makes you, as Al always said, one-dimensional. And when you can stop the run, how many yards did we get today?
Running?
Yeah.
It's like 47.
47 yards is not going to get it done.
No.
Yeah, so
no, I didn't get it on any level.
None. So it's just you get the day off Sunday and Monday, and you're back to the drawing board on Tuesday in preparation for the game next week. against Campbell.
So let's look at some of the comments. Han says a sheer and utter embarrassment for our program today, from the kids getting booed by their own schoolmates at the pep rally this week to getting blown out. It's time for some serious introspection. And Stevens Lee mentioned sort of the contract situation and talking about, I guess, the 2 to 3 years before you could even talk about a buyout. NC Aggies 02 says, as alumni, we have to contribute to the program, whether it's $200 or more. We have to do this. This is just one of those deals where, it looked like A&T was on the right track. Everything falling, sort of in place. Okay, you get embarrassed by North Carolina Central. Come back. Yeah, it's a 20-point loss to South Carolina State on the road, played better. Then the next week, maybe a fumble, you beat Richmond. You come into a bye week exactly in the middle of the season, and you jump out to the 14-0 lead, and then nothing else happens from there. And I just wonder where it all went wrong.
Yeah, because especially after the bye week, what you're looking for is some degree of improvement. And, it's really hard to pick an area of improvement that we saw from the Aggies today. And again, it's not being overly critical or just being realistic. I don't see where they improved in any area. So, like you said, you gotta finish your season, and you keep pounding. You don't give up, but it's really tough. It's going to be a tough road to tough mountain to climb.
And as was stated, we talked about it earlier. You mentioned the 47 yards rushing. Han says, gentlemen, the inability to run the football, it's a direct result of being weak up front. Do our kids know where the weight room is? Dudley has pitched, of course, Dudley local here, 8 shutouts. Somebody better be recruiting them. But yeah, it's hard to ask, Fambi to drop back so many times and not be able to establish a run, because we saw a pick 6 today. We saw where a running game could have helped in the passing game.
Right, exactly. And you got to go with what you got. I mean, Billy, you was asking earlier about Fambi, like maybe running some option plays, and he's just not that kind of quarterback. I mean, he's a drop back passer. He doesn't have what we call escapability skills, and he's getting better in terms of his decision making, but sometimes it's really difficult to ask a player to do something that they're not capable of doing. It's hard.
And look, I gotta read this one from my man E. Curry, who's a Hampton guy. By the way, he says Aggie fans should not be so critical. Starters are out due to injuries, and let's not forget that they got out to a strong start against a Hampton team that lost to a 20th ranked Rhode Island team in 2 overtimes on last week. And right, it was a great start, but I mean, for like the first 4 minutes of the game, and then the wheels just kind of came off.
They don't hand out trophies, man, at the 11-minute mark. You got to play the whole game.
See, NC Aggies 02 says, I'm here in the Triangle area. We have kids up here that will come to play. The coaches need to come out to recruit. And there's, it's I'm going to tell you what's interesting. I was at and this is not athletic related, but I was at an HBCU recruiting deal where there were a bunch of schools there.
Right.
From Morgan to Hampton was there, to Johnson C. Smith, to Tuskegee, to Clark. It was in the Triangle, as mentioned. Most kids, if you talk to 10 kids, 8 of them wanted to go to A&T.
Wow.
So, that's from an academic side.
Right.
And even when you talk about Aggie football across the state at the FCS level in particular, I mean, there are a lot of kids that want to come here to North Carolina A&T. And I'm sure that the coaches are out recruiting, these areas as well. As really, if you look at this, I mean, most of the kids are from the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, that's true. But, it's the kind of kid that you are recruiting. You got to recruit kids that can compete, in this CAA. And it's really difficult. And we mentioned this last year. We talked about toward the end of the season some of the needs of the team and how it would be corrected this year in terms of getting, for example, bigger players and that you need to compete against some of the big schools in the CAA. And it just hasn't manifested itself yet. But recruiting is a critical part, no doubt about that.
Yep. Stevens Lee says we were taken to OT by Division II Winston-Salem State team. No one should be surprised by this outcome. Our record is who we are. Also, I appreciate you guys' commentary. Appreciate that, Stevens Lee. Yeah, I mean, I thought Winston was a good team and has shown to be a good team. Still in that. See, I get it, Division II and all that, but that was a rivalry game. Winston is still in that CIAA race. I think Winston has Livingstone today. Both of them have the exact same record. The winner continues to be at the top of the CIAA.
Today, against Livingston.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you know, it's tough. I mean, I get it. It's a tough deal. You don't want to ever lose on homecoming, and particularly in the manner in which A&T won. But again, you've got to put this game behind you as quickly as possible to now prepare to go back on the road against a Campbell team that is vulnerable in of itself.
And Campbell has a little bit of revenge on their mind, you know, because they've been here 2 years in a row, and this is our first time, you know, going down there. I recall the first time we played them here, they were really pretty cocky about their chances of beating A&T, and of course we beat them that year, and so it's going to be a tough challenge next week down at Campbell.
Fellas, Han says, our coaches do not go after the local kids. For some reason, there's a love affair with the Atlanta Tidewater area. How's that working out for us? NCCU wins the backyard war, and look at them. I mean, there are some kids, but there are a lot of kids from the state of North Carolina that are here as well. But I get that. James says go back to the MEAC. I mean,
that's not going to happen.
No, that dog won't hunt.
No, that's not going to happen. We are where we are, and we're going to be there. So that's not an option.
NC Aggies 02 says Donal Leesville Road, which is a good program. There in Raleigh, has a quarterback that may go to Winston next year to play. We should have been out there talking to the top kids also. So I know a lot of the concerns here on the message board is about certainly the recruiting aspect. And Coach did mention that. He said in the off week they were going out and working on some other things, working on bettering themselves and working on the recruiting as well. So we'll have to see how that pans out once the latter part of December kind of comes around.
You know, Don, I looked at the last year, and I looked at our roster last year, and we were we just were not big enough last year. We had our biggest size-wise defensive tackle weighed 265, and like today we came in and Hampton averaged 317 a man. All of the teams that we have played in the Big South have very large linemen, and you know that's not good if you're looking at 60-minute game. So in your recruiting efforts, you got to be looking for some size.
And you got to look at, you know, when you recruit, you got to recruit kids that can play, be competitive in your conference. And we play in a conference, as you guys know, that most teams have size. And Donal, as you and I can attest to, we play some teams with some hellacious running backs, man. I mean, some really good running backs, big kids, and who not only have size, but they have speed. And it's really hard to measure, but, you know, it really hurt us losing Christian and
Graves.
Yeah, Graves. That was a big blow. And, of course, when you lose your first-team quarterback, especially a kid with the skills that White had, yeah. I mean, man, that is really hard to replace. It really is. And so, again, not making excuses for the Aggies, but they've had some major challenges this year. And of course, we still got, 6 more games to go. So you got to keep pounding. That's about it.
Yeah, so we'll have to, you know, and it's one more opportunity on next week. And we'll see what happens at Campbell. Campbell's vulnerable a little bit. as well. But again, it's another opportunity in a short week to try to make some adjustments and try to go into Bowie's Creek and get that first CAA win.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm sure it's back to the drawing board, and they'll look at the game film and see why certain things happen and why certain things didn't happen, and you just try to improve. I mean, that's all you can do.
Yeah, Hans asks, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on what must happen for us to improve so we are competitive? I think one of the things is we've got to A&T's got to cut down on the turnovers.
Yeah.
That's definitely one thing, and the mistakes in putting. The running game's got to improve. It's no question about that. You're putting yourself behind the chains. If you're getting 2 yards on first down, then you bring up second and long and maybe run it again. Then you got a third and long situation. So you've got to kind of improve in that area, certainly as well.
And you got to be realistic down, in terms of the type of players you got. You got to look at a situation in terms of what kind of players do we need to be competitive in this conference we're in. Because like you said, we're not going anywhere. I hear it all the time. You guys got to go back to the MEAC. That's not going to happen. So your only choice is to look and see what kind of players do we need to be competitive in this CAA, and then you do the best that you can to bring those type players in.
We're going to get ready to wrap it up here. Stevens Lee says the Lady Aggie volleyball team won 3-0. They are 10-7 on the season. They play at Campbell tomorrow at 1:00. Also, bowling is nationally ranked, so some good things happening in the athletics department, certainly as a whole. We're going to give the last word today to ODB, who says this was hard to watch. I don't see us winning another game this year, and we'll see next week. It's going to start at Campbell, and again, it's another opportunity. Try to make some adjustments within this 6-7 day time frame to try to get yourself back on the right track, and we will see what happens next week in Bowie's Creek against the Campbell Camels. So A&T drops to now 1-6 on the season, 0-2 in conference, or 0-3 in conference play, while Hampton moves to 4-3 and 1-2 in CAA play. As mentioned, our next broadcast of Aggie football is going to take place on next Saturday in Bowie's Creek against Campbell, and we're coming on with the pregame show beginning at 3:30 on the Aggie Sports Radio Network. Thanks to Dez back at the studios of the Aggie Sports Radio Network for all of his great work. For Al Swan and Billy Covington, Donal Ware saying so long from Truist Stadium here on the campus of North Carolina A&T. Your final score, Hampton 59, North Carolina A&T 17. You've been listening to Aggie Football on the Aggie Sports Radio Network.